What do we owe one another simply because we are Americans? Not because we belong to the same political party, not because we worship in the same church, come from the same neighborhood, share the same background, or agree on the most difficult questions facing our country. What do we owe one another simply because we share this nation? Welcome to The Common Good. I'm Eric Curry. This is a podcast about leadership, citizenship, service, responsibility, and the kind of country we are building together. It is not a podcast dedicated to one political party, one ideology, or one collection of policy positions. It is an examination of something deeper, the obligations we have to one another and the responsibility each generation carries to leave America stronger, freer, more just, and more united than it found it. Throughout this series, we will discuss leadership, education, economic opportunity, public safety, justice, military service, faith, family, community, and the future of our democracy. But before we can discuss any of those subjects, we must begin with the question beneath them all. What do we owe one another? America was founded upon a revolutionary idea that government does not grant people their fundamental rights. Human beings possess those rights by virtue of their existence, and legitimate governments are established to protect them. Our Constitution begins not with the name of a king, a president, a general, or a political party. It begins with three words: we the people. Those words tell us something important about the American experience. This country does not belong exclusively to those who govern it. It belongs to the people who inherit it, sustain it, challenge it, defend it, improve it, and eventually pass it on to another generation. Yet the phrase we the people also presents us with a difficult truth. A nation built upon individual liberty cannot survive through individualism alone. Freedom does not mean that we owe nothing to anyone. Rights do not eliminate responsibilities. Independence does not excuse indifference. The strength of a republic depends not only upon what citizens are permitted to do, but upon what citizens are willing to do for one another. We owe one another recognition of our basic human dignity. That does not mean that we must agree. It does not mean that every belief is equally wise, every argument is equally sound, or every action must be accepted without criticism. It means that in disagreement, we must remember that the person standing across from us remains a human being. He or she is someone's child, parent, spouse, neighbor, coworker, or friend. That person carries hopes, fears, disappointments, and experiences that we may not fully understand. Political disagreement does not strip another person of his humanity. Religious disagreements does not erase another person's dignity. Differences of race, color, class, gender, occupation, or upbringing do not make someone less entitled to the protections and promises of American citizenship. We also owe one another honesty. Democracy depends upon citizens who are willing to seek the truth, even when the truth is inconvenient to their political loyalties. We cannot build a healthy nation if every fact is filtered through partisanship. We cannot demand integrity from public officials while excusing dishonesty from those who represent our own side. Truth cannot belong to a political party. Accountability cannot be reserved only for our opponents. If we want honest government, we must become a people who value honesty more than victory. We owe one another equal protection under the law. The law should not bend according to wealth, status, race, political influence, or personal connections. Justice cannot be legitimate when it is applied aggressively to the powerless and cautiously to the powerful. Equality before the law does not guarantee that every person will experience the same outcome. It requires that every person be treated with the same fundamental fairness, due process, and dignity. When institutions fail to provide that fairness, citizens have not only the right, but the responsibility to demand reform. But reform must be pursued through discipline, persistence, civic participation, and respect for the democratic process, not hatred, not intimidation, or political violence. We owe one another the opportunity to contribute. A society cannot promise everyone the same destination. It can, however, work to ensure that a person's future is not permanently determined by the circumstances of his or her birth. A child born into poverty should still be able to receive a quality education. A person willing to work should have a reasonable opportunity to provide for a family. A veteran should have the chance to build a meaningful life after service. A person who has made a mistake should have some path towards restoration. A small business owner should have a fair opportunity to compete. Opportunity is not a charity. It is the belief that human potential exists in every community and that our nation becomes stronger when people are equipped to develop it. I want to pause momentarily to say that this episode of The Common Good is brought to you in part by the Eric Curry Liberty and Justice Scholarship. The scholarship was established to invest directly in the next generation of students and leaders. Its purpose is to support a deserving high school student pursuing higher education and to affirm a simple principle. Talent exists everywhere, but opportunity does not. Applications for the inaugural scholarship will be open January 2027, with the first recipient announced in July of 2027. To learn more, contribute, or follow the scholarship's progress, visit ericcurryofficial.com. The future of our country will be shaped by the young people we choose to believe in it today. That being said, we owe one another service. Most of the work that sustains America never appears on television. It happens in classrooms, hospitals, fire stations, military formations, police precincts, community centers, small businesses, places of worship, and family homes. It happens when a teacher stays late to help a struggling student. It happens when a service member leaves home to defend people he may never meet. It happens when a nurse provides compassion to someone in pain. It happens when a police officer exercises restraint and good judgment under pressure. It happens when a parent works an additional shift to provide for a child. It happens when a mentor recognizes potential in a young person who has stopped recognizing it in himself. A nation survives because ordinary people repeatedly decide that someone else's well-being matters. Service does not always require a uniform or title. Sometimes it is as simple as becoming dependable. Being the person your family, your organization, your neighborhood, or community can count on. We owe one another participation. Democracy is not something that happens somewhere else. It is merely the work of elected officials, judges, journalists, activists, or political professionals. It is sustained by citizens, citizens who vote, citizens who attend public meetings, citizens who serve on boards and commissions, citizens who volunteer, citizens who remain informed, citizens who contact their representatives, citizens who run for office, citizens who respectfully challenge authority, citizens who accept that sometimes they will lose an argument, an election, or a policy debate, and who continue participating without abandoning the country or attacking their fellow Americans. In a democracy, losing does not mean that your voice no longer matters. It means that you continue organizing, continue speaking, persuading, voting, and working within the constitutional system. No citizen is entitled to prevail in every debate, but every citizen is entitled to be heard, to advocate peacefully, and to receive equal treatment under the law. We owe that to one another. We owe one another restraint. Freedom of speech gives us the right to say many things. Wisdom requires us to consider whether everything we have the right to say is helpful, truthful, or even necessary. A functioning society depends upon more than legal boundaries. It depends upon character. It depends upon people who control their anger, people who disagree without dehumanizing, people who can experience disappointment without seeking revenge, people who can hold strong convictions without believing that everyone who thinks differently is evil. This does not require moral weakness. In fact, restraint often requires greater strength than retaliation. We should confront injustice. We should challenge corruption. We should condemn hatred. We should defend people whose rights are threatened. But we must be careful that in confronting what is wrong, we do not become consumed by the same contempt we claim to oppose. Finally, we owe one another hope, not shallow optimism, not the belief that America has always lived up to its ideals. Our history includes slavery, segregation, discrimination, political violence, economic exploitation, and the exclusion of millions of people from the full promises of citizenship. But our history also includes people who refuse to accept that those failures are permanent. People who believe the country could become more faithful to its founding principles. People who marched, served, taught, organized, sacrificed, legislated, litigated, voted, and sometimes died to expand the meaning of we the people. Hope is not the denial of America's failures. Hope is the determination that those failures will not have the final word. So, what do we owe one another simply because we are Americans? We owe one another dignity. We owe one another truth. We owe one another fairness. We owe one another opportunity. We owe one another service. We owe one another participation. We owe one another restraint. And we owe one another enough hope to continue the work of building a more perfect union. The common good does not require us to surrender our individuality, silence our convictions, or pretend that our disagreements are insignificant. It requires us to remember that liberty must be protected by responsibility, that leadership must be grounded in stewardship, and that citizenship is not merely something we possess, it is something we practice. America will not be sustained by presidents alone, nor by governors, judges, members of Congress, soldiers, teachers, police officers, or business leaders. It will be sustained when ordinary people decide that the future of this country matters more than the temporary satisfaction of defeating one another. Every generation inherits America. Every generation changes America. And every generation eventually leaves America to someone else. The question is not whether this nation will change. The question is whether we will leave it better than we found it. I'm Eric Curry, and this is The Common Good. Thank you for listening.